Greetings, everybody. Hello, I am Jenny Guy, and I am the Director of Marketing for Mediavine. This is our first Teal Talk. It is Thursday, January 9th, and it is 2020, believe it or not, a new decade. Welcome. We're so glad to have you here. How are things starting off for everybody? Are your 20s already roaring? Is it the Roaring 20s 2.0, or is it starting off kind of quietly? And are you getting the luxury of ramping up as opposed to getting smacked in the face with a skillet like we were with 2020? And the other question I wanted to ask you, which is going to lead into what we're talking about today, which is, are you sticking to your New Year's resolutions? Do you even make those? It's definitely the time of year where we have the new year, new you, and your vision board and your word of the year and what you really want to happen in the brand new year. And is that something you do for your business and your website? Do you plan out where you want to go in the next 12 months and how you're going to get there? Whatever you do to start out with, I don't think there are many of us content creators out there that wouldn't agree with the statement that attitude is everything when you're building your business, and it plays a huge role in where you go. So, but how do you actually make adjustments to that? How do you manifest success? How do you make actionable changes with those visions and dreams that you have that are going to engineer that decade you're dreaming of? And I am going to now enter my incredible guest for today. Kathleen Shannon, I'm so excited, is a designer and the founder of Braid Creative, which is a boutique branding agency and consultancy that she has worked with clients like Oklahoma's largest credit union, TFCU. I just totally jumbled those. The Brene Brown, not a big deal, and hundreds of other creative entrepreneurs. She is the author of the book Being Boss and the co-host of the Being Boss podcast. The podcast has over 8 million downloads and hundreds of episodes, and has established a whole community of women to strive to own who they are, know what they want, and actually make it happen, which sounds like a pretty good place to go in 2020. Confession time. I am secretly obsessed with Kathleen and have been since I saw her keynote at the first Mediavine conference in Charleston a few years ago. I still quote and steal stuff from her talk all the time, which we'll talk more about later. But I am incredibly, incredibly excited to be spending the next hour with Kathleen talking about all her badass strategies. Kathleen, welcome. Hello.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We're thrilled to have you back on the Mediavine stage. I don't know, in your office. And
the world is my stage.
What better way to intro you? That's fantastic. So happy New Year. And just to kind of, for those that aren't familiar with you quite yet, will you talk about your journey a little bit and how you've gotten to be where you are today, that road from designer to Braid Creative to being boss, and how all that works in your ecosystem?
Yeah, sure. So I've always grown up a creative. That was something that was really encouraged in my family and in my schooling, all the way from elementary. And in college, I did study graphic design and fine arts. I thought I was going to be a painter, but it turns out that it's kind of hard to make a living as a painter, right? So, and not for everybody, and that's what I want to see change in the world. But for now, I decided to take the graphic design route, and out of school, I got a job at an advertising agency. I was actually working with my sister. So I was an art director. She was the creative director. I'm the youngest. She's 7 years older than me. And I worked there for 5 years working on really neat projects, including being the lead designer for the NBA Hornets. Whenever they came up from after Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, they came up to Oklahoma City, and I got to work on a lot of really cool big projects. But I found that once I started to learn the difference between branding and marketing and advertising, I really started to find a love for branding. At the same time, I was personal blogging. I was remodeling an old historical home. And this will all make sense in a second, like how it all fits together.
Good.
But I was blogging about renovating like an old historical home. And I posted, I was getting married also. And so I posted my wedding invitations after I got married, and they were real funky. And this was actually kind of before you could buy really cool wedding templates off of Etsy. This was before Pinterest even. So to have a really funky, like offbeat wedding invitation like I had, it was inspired by Wes Anderson movies.
Yes.
It was like a really rare thing. And
I love that. Now I want to see it real bad.
I know. Right, so it was picked up actually by a really big blogger, Joanna at A Cup of Joe. And I started getting other brides and grooms asking me to design their invitations. So I started designing wedding invitations as a side hustle. And
Right.
as we all know, side hustles sometimes turn into full hustles.
Yeah.
So I decided to quit my job in advertising because, again, I love the design aspect. I love branding. But I didn't necessarily love the whole atmosphere of advertising. I've also come full circle around to that as well since then. But I started working for myself. I started blogging about working for myself, really having to slog my way through mindset, habits, routines, project management, client management, all of that stuff. So I was blogging about it as I went. So that's where the blogging really ties in, is that since I started, I've been creating content around what I do and how I'm doing it as I go. I'm not pretending to be an expert, but then by writing about it and putting in the hours, I become an expert. Yeah. So from there, my sister decided to also quit the advertising agency she was working at. We started Braid Creative together. Since then, we've grown it to a team of, I think we're at 8 or 9 employees now. Awesome. We've had hundreds of clients, including Brene Brown, like you mentioned. Yeah. And it's just been incredible. And we've come full circle to working in advertising and marketing, but really bringing what we've learned about personal branding and blending who you are into the work that you do, into what we do with every single client, no matter how large their company or organization is.
That is quite a story. I have 50,000 other questions that came from your story that you just told. First, just to kind of baseline that Kathleen and I are both Oklahomies. I did not realize that until we started talking before, but we're both from Oklahoma. Was it all Wes Anderson movies for that wedding invitation, or was it a particular favorite? I love Wes Anderson.
Well, it was really kind of a Royal Tenenbaum inspired invitation. So it was kind of like if someone from the Royal Tenenbaums was getting married, what would their wedding invitation look like? So it wasn't overly cheesy.
Right.
And then since then, I definitely did a Life Aquatic inspired wedding invitation for someone else. Yeah. Again, not overly themey, but just having that kind of vibe, like being in that world and designing in that world.
And Wes Anderson creates such a strong visual, like he creates such a world that you are immersed into every film, and it's so consistent. Even with animated like Fantastic Mr. Fox, you're in this world that he's created. I love it. All right, we could talk about that all day. That is another live. Okay, so it's the new year, and I blabbed a little bit about this in the intro. It's definitely that stereotypical time for goal setting and resolutions. So kind of a multiple part question, but first, do you partake in the resolution setting? And second, how do you advise your listeners, readers, clients to go about them? And third, do you take your own advice?
Yes. So I've always loved resolutions ever since I was really little. I think that it's gotten a little bit of a backlash because it's hard for people to stick to resolutions. A lot of people are making too many resolutions or unrealistic resolutions, but I don't see anything wrong with joining in on the energy that everybody has at this time of year to become who it is that they want to be. And really, my mission in life is to become more of who I am and to freely express who that is. And that's what I want for my clients too. I want to drill down into who are you actually? How do we blend that into the work that you do and express that in a way that is incredibly, and this term is way overused, but authentic and real to who you are. So yeah, I love resolutions, and I've done it a lot of different ways. So one thing I didn't mention in the intro is that I also have a podcast called Being Boss.
Yes.
And it is also a book. And one of the things that me and my co-host, Emily Thompson, like to do is pick a word of the year. As a theme. And so really picking a theme allows you to tailor and evolve your resolution as you go. So I certainly have some like real basic resolutions like, okay, I'm going to try and keep my fingernails polished this year, or I'm going to try my hand at meal prep this year, like kind of the typical stereotypical resolutions.
Sure.
But the word of the year allows you to ride the wave of the theme, to filter anything that comes your way through the lens of that theme. And for me, it just helps me give my year a little bit of a mindset focus or even an attitude focus. So my resolution for this year, or my theme of this year, is to take the middle road. I am very like black or white. I either hate it or I love it.
Yeah.
I'm very opinionated and decisive. And this year I want to be able to see both sides a little bit more. I want to be able to have more compassion by taking the middle road. And also just this idea of like the middle road for me visually, because I'm a visual person.
Of course.
It conjures up this path, you know, and I start to think about, okay, if I'm on this road, what am I seeing? Are there trees? Am I in a city? What does it look like? What does it smell like? What does it feel like? Where am I walking toward? And it can just be a fun way to get introspective and think. Yeah.
I love that all of it's kind of, it's almost like you're branding your year by choosing that name, by setting yourself up and creating the environment that you want to exist in. And that word is so amazing. I love that middle road. That's so great.
Yeah.
I love that. So where in your middle ground, what do you see around you? What does your year look like to you so far?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, a lot of the middle road is I just bought my dream house here.
Yay!
And I live outside of Detroit, Michigan. Oklahoma City is my home base. But I bought this really funky mid-century modern house, but I'm surrounded by woods and I have deer walking through my yard. And the other day I saw a skunk and some fox and ducks and turkey. Anyway, a ton of wildlife. So, but it's cool because I'm kind of close to Detroit. So really my middle road and what I see around me is balancing things like the modern world that we live in and then nature. So I would love to just take more hikes outside. I also have a 6-year-old son. And so really balancing motherhood and being a parent with being a working, boss. It's a lot. So that's kind of what my middle road probably looks like.
That sounds amazing. I don't know. My screen went dark. Can you see me, Kathleen?
I can see you.
All right. My computer disappeared for me, so that's good. Well, what I was picturing when you were saying that was like Snow White on her cell phone with the animals on her. That's what I was feeling when you were saying that. Basically. So I love that journey for you. Yes. Okay. So another question on this is, how do you find the balance between inspirational and actionable? And just speaking from our own personal, because at Mediavine, we design our own conferences and we plan education for that. And we sometimes every time we do this, find that when we focus education on feelings, we can have a lot of complaints or a lot of feedback that the content is not useful or loaded with those action items, or it's too woo-woo. So how do you combat the anti-woo, or how do you balance those two things?
That's a good question. And I've been on my own journey of, going from totally woo, like let's get into our feelings and send our chakras into the universe and align everything, to being completely cynical and skeptical and not believing in anything. And the truth is, the world that I want to live in is a world that's filled with magic. It's a world that has people who are driven by their feelings to make themselves and their world more beautiful, right? And so to separate your feelings from your work or the actions that you're taking, I think is doing everyone a disservice. I think that whenever you can really decide how it is that you want to feel, tailor your thoughts to support those feelings, and then move through the world accordingly, you're just going to be more fulfilled. You're going to have a job that you love. You're going to have relationships that you love. I mean, it's not that easy, obviously, but I think that it's, for me, definitely aspirational to try and have better feelings. I'm also all about practical action. I'm that person who, if you come to me with a problem, I'm going to try and solve your problem. I'm actually pretty bad at let me just listen to your feelings and say, I'm here for you.
Me too.
Right? I'm like, okay, how are we going to solve this? So that is one thing. I'm constantly trying to bring action into all of the things. So, just now I was talking about taking the middle road, but that also means that I'm taking action. I'm taking those steps. So one of the things you were talking about, inspiration versus actionable, One of the things that I experienced in the last few years is extreme burnout. So I was podcasting once a week, sometimes twice a week, every week for 3 years. I was a new mom. I have been running 2 full-time businesses, and it's a lot, right? So I got a little bit burned out last year. I was like, no new things. I didn't even have time to make friends or have friends over for brunch or anything.
Yeah.
And this year I've decided, okay, and I also kept waiting for the inspiration to happen. And this year I decided, okay, I can't wait around for inspiration. I'm just going to have to take action. I have to decide the kind of person that I want to be, which is whenever I think about myself, whenever I'm like 70, 80, 90, I want to be able to say that I was a true artist in my lifetime. That's something, the word like true artist just resonates with me. And right now it feels very aspirational. I would feel very cheesy calling myself a true artist, but I want to take the actions to start to get there, right? So one of the things that I've thought about doing was taking a writing course. And then on Instagram, I saw that there was a local in-person writing workshop that was 8 weeks long. Without overthinking, I signed up for it. So I'm signing up to go to a place. And the last weekend, there was a t-shirt painting workshop that I saw, and I just signed up and went to it. So this year I'm taking a lot more action by thinking about who it is that I want to be and how I want to feel, and then signing up for things and showing up.
That is, yes, burnout on everything. And then I think that part of the key that we always find with we work with content creators, and so much of our lives exist online and virtual, and the thought of actually showing up and being present in a place can be challenging and scary. But I love that you're finding enrichment from that and seeing that you're not overthinking, because that can also be the analysis paralysis of like, should I sign up for that thing? What about that thing? I don't know.
Right.
I love that. That's super exciting. Okay. So this is something that I think everybody who creates in any capacity and gets any job and does anything is imposter syndrome. It is such a huge nemesis of creativity. And how do you have any particular tips on that, or anything to share about how you've combat that in your own life?
Yeah, I have to admit that this is probably a little bit of a blind spot for me, because through my burnout, I really battled imposter syndrome.
Really?
Yeah, for sure. And so I'm still maybe even in it a little bit. And I find that the best way to get over imposter syndrome, well, a couple of things. One, I'm glad that I started my businesses whenever I was young and dumb enough to think that I knew everything. Right?
Yes. Yeah, totally.
And then now that I'm a little, hopefully, wiser, definitely older, I now know that there's so much that I don't know. But the truth is that we're all in the same boat. None of us really know. And so that gives me a lot of grace whenever it comes to imposter syndrome, and also admitting that, saying that out loud. So part of my content has always been, I'm figuring it out as I go, and I might only be 2 steps ahead of you, and I'm still trying to learn more. I will be a student of life my whole life. I will never pretend to know everything. But if I'm at least 2 steps ahead of someone else, I can hold the flashlight for them. I can light the way, and I can hold out my other hand, grab their hand, and help them along the way. So that's the way that I like to think about it, is that we're all in it together. We're all doing our best. We're all exploring our different truths and our different answers to different problems. And so for me, it definitely does get philosophical, and just thinking about the world and all the people in it as like a tapestry of threads. And even my branding business is called Braid Creative, because it's all about, weaving the different aspects of who you are together. We're all just, threads in a huge tapestry. And whenever you look at it as a whole, your one little thread might be ineffectual, but the closer in you get, the more important it is. So, and it takes all of us. So I guess that's the thing that I do to combat it. And then again, I just try not to overthink it. And I've also found that just doing the work really makes me feel a lot better. So I have my podcast, Being Boss, and I show up there every week to talk about doing the work. And soon that became my full-time business. Braid was still working, but I was putting a lot of my attention in growing Being Boss. And I found that the more I talked about the work and the less I was actually doing the work, the more I felt a little fraudy.
Yeah.
So, even just this year, I'm back at Braid Creative full time because I like pushing some pixels. I like designing things. I like getting face to face with my clients. And it really helps me stay in the world of my expertise. And it helps me stay in touch with what people are encountering, what their problems are, and how I can help them solve it.
Love that. I want to talk about how you your process on helping someone, because what you're talking about doing is really helping people. Not your process sounds like not choosing a brand and imposing it on you, but uncovering a brand that is inside of you anyway and finding that authentic, more of an uncovering process as opposed to a schlacking something on, is what it sounds like to me. And how do you walk people down the path to finding what their internal brand is, what's going to make them are comfortable and authentic to themselves?
Right. I'm always trying to find the golden thread, right? So there's all the threads that make up your brand, which is your offerings, your services, your dream customer, what it is, your tone and your style. I'm trying to really get to what is it about you that really won't change, no matter what your business offering is, because business offerings change all the time. If you're an entrepreneur, you have to innovate and evolve as you go. So what doesn't change, and how can we get to that, golden thread? So it is a collaborative process. Did you ever watch Mad Men?
Oh, girl. Mm-hmm.
Right. So in Mad Men, like the Don Draper creative directors of the world come into a board meeting and they're like, here is your brand. And it's a surprise. And I think that a lot of brand makers and designers want it to feel like magic, and it is a little bit magic, but the bulk of it is actually listening to your client, asking them the right questions, reflecting back to them what they're saying so that they feel heard and understood, and then taking that and creating a design and a brand around that, messaging, positioning, design, and all of that. So the Braid method, which is our process of working with people, is a 3-part process that includes a brand discovery with physical cards that our clients fill out, a discussion about what they wrote down. We're hearing what they're saying. We're looking at what they're putting on their cards. We're seeing where there's any disconnects or where we have further questions. Then we have another meeting where we're presenting a visual PDF back to them that reflects what they said and where we think we should go next with the visual identity and different headlines and key messaging points that we uncover. Mood boards. Who doesn't love a mood board?
Who doesn't love a mood board?
And so it really is, we're getting buy-in along the way and together. And then there's the final brand platform, which is like the magical part,
right?
But they've been able to see the workings, behind the curtain. So it really is something that we create together.
Collaboration is key in all forms of art. And I loved hearing that you, about your aspects as a visual artist. Mine is kind of similar in that I was in theater. And so it was that kind of the same thing about needing to make money, but also finding a way to balance that artistic sense. What I should focus on. And I feel like there's so many things happening at once. How do you get into a place of being able to focus?
Your camera disappeared for 1 second, but I think I caught what you asked, which is like what to do if you don't know what you want and how to find focus around what you do want. Yeah. So, this is another thing where I could not relate to this question probably 7 years ago. I've always been so good at knowing exactly what I want, being able to visualize it, being able to break down that end goal into steps along the way to take those steps and to get what I want. But with burnout and oftentimes parenthood, you can start to lose yourself in just the daily grind. Like I always joke that with my co-host, if I feel like I'm just getting from like one teeth brushing to the next, and I'm burnt out, there's not much that I want, right? And so that might not make sense to anybody, but
No,
I
it
know that
does.
I'm burnt out
No.
whenever I feel like I'm just constantly like brushing my teeth and trying to get to the next toothbrushing so I can go to bed.
But
Anyway,
that's like a moment of, but like brushing your teeth is a moment where you have to kind of reflect whether you like it or not. Like you're standing there and there, unless you're able to do something really, really capably with another hand, you've got one hand and you're staring in the mirror usually. So
right. Maybe
you're
that's
like,
just like, maybe you're right. Maybe that's like my most still point of the day where I'm
yeah.
having to think about, okay, my day ahead of me and my day behind me. So yeah, but coming back to not knowing what you want, I did experience that recently. And here's what I did to overcome it. This might not work for everybody, so take it with a grain of salt, take it or leave it. But I decided to get in the practice of wanting things again. So what I did is I got out my notebook and I said, I'm not going to leave without writing down 100 things that I want. Like either I want to eat, see, do, experience, watch, listen to, smell, all the things. So it started to generate like, I want to hike through the redwoods. I want to eat sushi in Tokyo. I want to hug Oprah. I want like there, and then I started getting into the wanting. And so that really did spark things. And then I started to look at that list and see where there are themes. One of the themes for me is travel. Okay, if I want to travel, what is the next step to actually traveling? It's blocking off time on my calendar. It's picking people that I want to travel with. It's buying plane tickets. It's making the plans. And the truth is, and this is what I learn more and more every single year, is that doing fun stuff takes hard work. Like no one's going to do it for you.
Yeah.
Or at least the older you get, the more that you become in charge of being the person that makes the fun happen, the harder work it is. So I just started breaking down the steps of, okay, this sounds exhausting, but I'm just going to lean into it. I'm going to book a trip and see what happens from there. So that's something that I'm doing this year is I'm just blocking off time on my calendar and I'm recruiting friends to go on different trips with. And that's how I'm starting to get back into finding focus. And then, the other thing I want to say about finding focus about what you want is to just follow your curiosity. Like, wouldn't it be interesting to write this story? And then for me, like I said, I've signed up for a writing workshop because I've been thinking about writing the same story, which is essentially the story of how I met my husband. I just haven't put it down on paper, but I've been thinking about writing it for 12 years and it just never has come out, right? So now I need the accountability. And so that's how I'm finding focus, is finding accountability.
Love all those things. Do you have any destinations chosen yet?
Yeah, so I'm going to Savannah, Georgia in a couple of weeks. I've never been to Savannah. Have you been?
Yeah, you'll love it.
I'm so excited. And then I'm going to New Orleans in a few months for the Being Boss conference.
Yes.
So I'll be speaking there. And then I'm thinking about going to Mexico City with my husband for our anniversary. I've always been to like the beachy areas of Mexico, but I want to experience the architecture and food and art in Mexico City. So that's another thing. Like if you're not inspired, go to an art museum, pick up a book, start consuming more beautiful things, putting yourself in the way of beauty, as Cheryl Strayed puts it.
Love that.
And you'll start to get inspired. You'll start to find focus.
Totally very helpful. And you're going to love Savannah. And I've only flown in and out of Mexico City, but the pictures are stunning. So in terms of business, and this is going to tie into the thing that I always steal from you when I'm speaking at different conferences, which is the hot shit list. I love this. Sorry, I said shit, everyone, but it's what she calls it. And it's exactly what it is. So in terms of manifesting and making your dreams and your goals a reality, talk about the hot shit list and how people can do this with their business rather than just with their personal lives.
Right. So the theme here is that I love a list, right?
Yeah,
so
I do
just like
too.
my list of writing down 100 things for your business. One of the things that I came up with early on in working for myself was my hot shit list. So there's your shit list, like the people that you never want to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about that. Think about the people that you would love to work with. So for me, I have a branding agency. So I'm thinking about the kinds of people that I would love to do branding for. So your list is comprised of 200 rows and then multiple columns. I'll get into the columns in a second. But the first one is the person, right? So at the very top of my hot shit 200 list is Beyonce every single time. Like if I could figure out a way to work with Beyonce or for Beyonce, or even like branding Beyonce's makeup artist, I mean, that would be incredible.
Yeah.
Or, anyway, Beyonce's on there. And then beyond that, I have maybe different brands. So maybe I have a brand like Nike, or Nike is just a huge brand, so that's pretty obvious. But I'll think of like smaller brands. Who else could I work for? I'll think of maybe even different types of creative entrepreneurs that I would love to work with. So maybe it's a real estate agent or a makeup artist. I keep saying makeup artist. I think that's like my other life dream job.
Makeup is amazing. I love makeup.
Or authors or speakers or wellness professionals, yogis. And so once I start thinking about the kinds of people that I would like to work with, then I start thinking about specific people, and I'll even write those down. And the goal is to get to 200. I will admit on this one, I usually only get to like 50 people.
Yeah.
So then next to their name, you're going to have a contact column, or maybe like their website. Like, where is their biggest presence? So either their website or their Instagram handle, or wherever you interact with them the most. Then next to that, you're going to have contact. So if you do have contact information, put them down. And then in the next 3 columns, and there's probably software. I think that there's software for every kind of spreadsheet, but whatever. In the next 3 columns, you're going to have the points of contact that you've made with them. So it might be signing up for their mailing list. Again, this is another thing that's probably going to inspire you, because if you're not signed up yet for Beyonce's mailing list or for Oprah's mailing list, maybe you need to start receiving that content to get your finger on the pulse of what's happening in their industries and in their worlds. So it might be signing up for their mailing list first and foremost. It might be reaching out to them on Instagram, not pitching them, but commenting on their stuff, liking their stuff, and then developing really a relationship from there. So the Hot Shit 200 list is both aspirational. That's not a word.
I like it.
Aspirational and actionable, because you're aspiring to work with these people or interact with them somehow. And then you're taking action on actually creating and developing that relationship, and at least putting it into the world. And then it's a little bit magical, because I have found that a lot of the people that I have put on my Hot Shit 200 list, including Dr. Brene Brown, have become my clients.
So can you go into the Brene Brown story? We might have heard of her once or twice.
Yeah. So Dr. Brene Brown is a researcher and author, and her book, Daring Greatly, changed my life. It really helped me understand what it means to be vulnerable, to show up wholeheartedly, to show up and be seen, even in the face of critics. And talk about imposter syndrome. Like, that's a great book to read if you have imposter syndrome. And so her work really spoke to me as an artist and someone whose mission is to live an authentic life. And so I read her book, and I was blogging at Braid Creative. So on our business blog, I decided to do a book review. And I said, if you're a creative entrepreneur, you have to read this book. It's incredible. And then I tweeted the book review, and I added her in the tweet. So I said, hey, I did a book review of Daring Greatly. She happened to read it, which I didn't know until a month later. I see her name land in my inbox, and it says, I read your review. Thank you for that. I've been following your work ever since. I'm going on Oprah's Super Soul Sunday in like a month, and I would love to have my brand match who it is that I want to be as I become Brene Brown. Obviously, she's always been Brene, but so yeah, that was probably, I guess, 7 years ago now. So it was at the very beginning of all of that. And speaking of manifesting, it's actually really funny, because of that list of all the things that I want, I put down, I want to be on Netflix. Like, I wrote that on there. And then, funny enough, early in 2019, Brene emailed and said, hey, I'm going to be filming a Netflix special. I would love for you and your sister, who I own my branding agency with, I would love for you all to fly out and come see it and be there for the taping. Just having you all in the audience would mean a lot. So we flew out to the taping, and I'm watching the Netflix show whenever it's released. And my DMs are flooded with, did I just see you on Netflix? Because there's an audience pan, and there's a little glimpse of me. So I guess, like I achieved my goal of getting on Netflix. It's not really what I imagined. I was imagining having like my own Chelsea Handler style talk show.
Well, naturally.
But, things manifest in different ways sometimes. So anyway, that's how I got Renee, and we've been working with her team ever since. And as she's really grown and developed in her personal brand, her team has grown, and it's just been incredible seeing her success.
She's really inspirational. I saw her at Mom 2.0 last year in Austin, and she was just lovely and very inspirational, and so exciting to see her. And Dairy Greatly is incredible. So all the things, she's amazing. And it was all through you writing a book review you were just doing it just to express how led you were to talk about this book.
That's the thing about networking for me, is that I've never been strategic about it. And sometimes I feel anytime I've tried to get strategic about it, it's come across as like feeling forced, or I feel thirsty, a little bit for it. And I just want to be putting good things out into the world and sharing what it is that I know, and trusting that it all comes back around, because it usually does.
Very true. And exciting in that, because networking, I think, can feel so okay, talking about networking, because and manifesting and just being around, what networking advice do you give people, especially those of us who feel incredibly uncomfortable or icky, or even taking it a step beyond that to something like selling yourself or pitching, or when you have to do that, because you do have to do that. So how do you reconcile that icky feeling and make it authentic to yourself?
Yeah. So I think the more that you are practicing your craft and really care about what you do, the easier it is to talk about it, because you're not trying to sell it. You're just simply explaining what it is that you do. So, I've been in RFPs, which is like a request for a proposal, like a very official process where you almost feel like you're in court, whenever they're questioning you. And I'm like, hey, listen, I am not in the business of convincing you. I'm used to working with people who have been on a waiting list to work with me, so I'm not in the business of trying to convince anybody that they have to choose me. There is enough room for everybody. I just really love what I do. Here's how I work. And if this sounds like it's a good fit, let's work together. If not, that's okay too. So for me, I'm just never really selling myself. I'm simply explaining and sharing what it is that I do through things like blogging and podcasting, and even conversations like this.
Yeah.
The other thing that I have to say about selling yourself is to generously give it all away for free. Give as much away for free as you can. So I used to do coaching. I used to do like branding, consulting, and coaching beyond the Braid method, like the deliverables that I offer, which is the full design and messaging. I don't do a lot of consulting anymore, because I've given it all away for free in my book, Being Boss, on my podcast, Being Boss, and on the Braid blog. So I'm constantly sharing content that people in the past have paid, hundreds of dollars for, or even thousands of dollars for an engagement. So the more you can give away for free, the more generous you are, the more you become a trusted expert in your field or in your industry. And if the word expert makes you uncomfortable, the more you become a trusted guide in your industry. So the more that you're showing up and sharing, the better. It also kind of feels reciprocal. Like, you've been giving so much away, you should expect that people are going to want to hire you now. The other thing I have to say, whenever it comes to, sales and feeling icky, I see a lot of stuff that says, charge what you're worth, charge what you're worth. Well, what does that even mean? I say price yourself for what makes you feel comfortable, and then over deliver, so that next time you can raise your prices accordingly and work your way up from small to larger. At least that's the way that I did it, and the way that makes me feel really comfortable. And then whenever it comes to networking, I mean, even this conversation, I feel like we've had drinks before. I feel like we've been friends, And so I think that's, if you can just approach everything like that, where you're just a couple of friends having a conversation. And I've certainly been in spaces where people are just trading business cards and it feels icky. Just try and find the one thing that you can catch on to. So usually it could start with something as simple as a compliment, or asking someone what book they're reading. It doesn't have anything to do with the industry or the networking or what it is that you're doing. Just try and like, one thing that I always say, I don't know if I said this in the Charleston talk, but like turn on your taxi light. So whenever you walk into a room, pretend like your only job is to shine. And so one of my executive coaches, Jay Pryor, gave me this advice one time whenever I was really nervous about being an attendee at a conference. I didn't know anybody, and it was like a 4-day long thing with a bunch of really cool bloggers with like top knots and striped shirts and skinny jeans and little, ankle boots. Yeah. I felt really nervous and like I wasn't going to belong or that I was going to feel like a weirdo. Then he was like, listen, Kathleen, your only job is to show up and shine. So pretend like you were a taxi, you're turning your taxi light on, you are ready for friends to jump in your taxi. That's all you've got to do. It's just focus on turning that light on. So I do that every time. I just think, okay, all I have to do is shine.
I love that advice. And I think it's so true that you can get so overwhelmed in those rooms and people who look super duper cool. I'm not sure I know what conference you're talking about, but I could probably guess. And I think that just also the thing that I always think about is there are so many other people in that room that feel the way you feel. Probably there's got to be at least 5 other incredibly lonely, freaked out, nervous people in that room. Find those people and they can become your tribe real quick. It's always just look for the people on the outskirts, it's good. Okay, guys, if you have questions for me or Kathleen, please feel free to chime in. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep chatting her up because this is a lot of fun. So do you have any favorite resources? We mentioned Brene Brown and you said Daring Greatly, which is a great one, but any resources? It could be software, like for making really awesome lists that are visual or making a mood board or things that might help people on this journey to finding themselves, building their brand and having the engineering the decade that they are looking for.
I have 2 things. So one is the chalkboard method. I've got to talk about the chalkboard method.
Please do.
So
it's famous.
You can find it at beingboss.club/chalkboard. And we have a podcast episode about it. We have free worksheets on it, but it really is essentially making space for your goals. So what I like to do is have a physical chalkboard in my office. What I did is I painted a door that I bought from Lowe's, like one of those light, empty doors. Mm-hmm. I painted it with chalkboard paint, let it dry. And then each quarter, I make space for however many clients I want. So typically I can work with 5 creative entrepreneurs a quarter, and I can be working on either an organizational project or, promotional campaign for one of my larger clients. So I will literally make 5 spaces for those clients. And it's not that I'm writing my goal down, I'm making space for my goal. And then I always write unexpected extra and I draw a couple more spaces. And this is going to sound really woo-woo because some people do say, okay, I get it. Like I get you're making spaces, but then how do you actually fill it?
Yeah.
My question back is always, have you made the chalkboard yet? Like the first thing is physically actually doing it, which is really hard for people. It's vulnerable to say, okay, this is what I want and I don't have it yet. So that's one thing that I do. And you can learn more about that. We have an hour-long podcast about it. Again, at beingboss.club.
We're sharing all the links, girl. Cool. We got you.
And then the other thing that I have is the CEO Day Kit at Being Boss. So that one is not free, but it's all the tools that me and my co-host use to plan our business for the year. And so that includes getting really clear about our intentions. So we're getting into some feelings and some of the stuff. And then getting really clear about our numbers, so what offerings do we have? How much do we price them at? How many do we need to sell? I mean, math, it doesn't get less woo-woo than that.
No.
So adding up what it is that you're doing. We talk about your marketing plan for the year. We talk about all sorts. I think that there's 7 or 8 different modules in there that really dive into each section of our business and how we plan for it. So even things like, what are your roles and duties? What is your job title? A lot of people, especially creative solo entrepreneurs, don't have job titles for themselves. So whenever you can get clear about what it is that you do and what it is that you want to be doing all day, and give yourself a title accordingly, the more you start to live into that, and you start to see where you need support. So you can list out all the other tasks that you're doing that you don't want to do. You can create job titles for those and hire accordingly. So we talk about growing your team. We talk about how you lead people into your premium offering and getting them to buy by offering them other things first, like a newsletter that they can sign up for example, or a certain kind of opt-in. So that's the thing that we really use every single year. We call it our CEO Day Kit, because once a year we take a year to just focus on our business. And then after that, it's done. And you can revisit it quarterly, but you at least know where you're going.
That is incredible. Yeah, defining those roles and defining what you are, I think, is so hard sometimes, because especially what if someone were to say, I can't afford to hire anyone. I can't afford to grow my business this year. How do I handle all of that? I know what I want to be doing, but I have to be doing X, Y, and Z.
Right. So at that point, if you're doing a lot and you can't afford to hire someone else, I would say it's probably time to raise your prices. Like if you are so busy, or to get really focused and efficient in your own process. So it might be automating some things. It might be hiring just a contractor, just 5 hours a week to handle the thing that's really distracting you or keeping you from doing what you're doing best. And then also looking at how much more money could you be making if you weren't doing those things. If you were just focusing on your core genius, how would that impact your bottom line?
Okay. So you've mentioned a business coach. How long have you had a business coach? What does a business coach do? And how do you know when you need a business coach or you should have a business coach?
That's a great question. So I had a business coach whenever I first started Braid Creative, and we actually worked in trade with them. So we did their branding and then they coached us. And so that was Jay. And really, whenever it comes to having a coach, and it was a short term, it was only for a year long. So it was maybe even only 6 months. But I don't necessarily think that you need a business coach all the time.
Right.
So sometimes whenever you might need a business coach is if you are thinking about making a transition. So maybe you're thinking about quitting your day job and working for yourself full time, and you need an action plan for, okay, how do I actually make that transition? What literally are my next steps that I need to take? So a business coach can offer you, one is, insights on next steps, but then also accountability on getting those next steps done. And a business coach can be helpful whenever you're thinking about pivoting who your dream client is. A business coach can be helpful whenever you're thinking about partnering with somebody or growing your team. Anytime you're making shifts in your business where you feel a little bit unclear, a coach can help a lot. And then consultants are really great too whenever there's something very specific that you need. So let's say you need a consultant specifically on creating an email opt-in and then a funnel and Facebook ads to match and all the things, right? So then you might just hire a consultant who can tell you what to do and or help you implement it. So I'm usually talking a lot about the difference between like, when do you need a new brand and when do you need a business coach? And so sometimes you need a business coach, sometimes you need a new business coach if you know that you want to work for yourself, but you don't quite know what you want to do. So then you might get even more of like a life coach style person who's really helping you dive into what you're passionate about or what you're curious about or what kinds of things people are always asking you for that you're not yet monetizing. So really helping you uncover what it is that you're good at and what you do. Whereas a brand, you might need a new brand whenever you're doing the thing and you're ready to make it look polished and cohesive and attract the right dream customer to what it is that you're offering.
Excellent advice. Okay, we've got a question. This is from my sister-in-law. How many goals for the year should be made to keep it realistic and not scary? And then how do you remind yourself later in the year of these goals and keep track of your progress, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have a Moleskin planner. I use it religiously. And at the beginning of every single week, I'll typically write my goal or my theme or my word or my intention of the year and then of the week in there. So I love getting into that. And then from there, one of the things that I like to do is whenever I set my goal for the year is to break it down. So let's say my goal this year is to travel, internationally somewhere. Like that was a goal. Well, and you know what? I'm going to rewind a little bit because remember how I told you that I wrote down that list of 100 things?
Yeah.
Like I have 100 goals at any given time.
Dude. That's many goals.
And what I have found is that like 3 or 4 of them will probably bubble up per year without me even realizing it. So I love taking that list of 100 things, putting it in a drawer somewhere, and then coming back to it in a year and seeing what I've actually accomplished. So that's one way to do it, is to like set your goals and then forget about them and just see what bubbles up. But then another way to do it, and maybe this is like my point, is that there's maybe not too many goals. Maybe there's not too few goals. You might have half a goal, and that's fine too. It really just depends on what your style is and what it is that you're needing in any given year, in any given season. So I guess it's just based off of what you can do to cultivate confidence whenever it comes to setting goals and achieving them. So I would say if you need to set 100 goals in order to accomplish just one of them, that's okay. If you need to just set one goal in order to accomplish one goal, that's okay too. But focus on breaking it down into what is the next smallest step that I can take in order to reach this goal. And one thing that you might do is think about your starting point of your goal and the end point of your goal. What is the next smallest step toward achieving that goal? So let's say your goal is one of my goals is to maybe one day have a cottage in the woods here in Michigan with my best friend. And so what is the next step behind actually getting that cottage? It's us sitting at the title place, signing the paperwork to getting that cottage. Okay, so then, backing into it, next, and then backing forward to it, the next smallest step I can take toward that is getting on Zillow and researching cottages, right? So that's the way that I like to do it. Again, there's no right or wrong way. There's no too many or too few goals. It really is just like a personal thing. But staying reminded of it, I think, again, the chalkboard method is a great place to make space for your goals and to see this big visual reminder. And the chalkboard, it can also be a cork board. It can be a whiteboard. It can be different, but it is important that it's visual and in your space where you can see it so that you're reminded of what you're wanting to attract.
Talk to me a little bit about mood boards, because you've been talking about those, and I think we all know what a mood board is, but I want to hear what you do and what purpose those mood boards serve for you.
Yeah, so I primarily use visual mood boards to set the tone and style of a brand that I'm creating, but personally, I've used them for decorating my home. And I don't do a lot of like mood boards that are the life ones, like where you cut things. Like the ones that you where you're trying to like mood board, a vision board. That's what
vision board. Okay, so mood board. You see a difference in those things.
That mood board is what I do to like visually see what it is that I'm wanting to create and to start to gather all the inspiration all in one place. And it helps me remember not to forget things too. So I have mood boards for brands. I have mood boards for my personal interior design, and I'm laying out things like colors, textures, typography, lighting, maybe certain words that help me remember, like, okay, we want this to feel woodsy and masculine with a pop of color, and we want it to feel a little bit like campfire vibes. And so I'm layering in photos as well. So that's what I use a mood board for.
I love that. Okay, so final question, because we're almost out of time, which is always depressing to me, especially today. If people, Q1 for a lot of people is not only it's a restart, but it's also, it can be a slump, especially coming out of a really hot Q4 where you're making a ton of money hand over fist and everything feels amazing and you're cooking and nothing has calories and life is a dream. And so what do you do when you're really slumped? Do you have any personal or professional tips to pull yourself from that slump and really re-engage?
Not necessarily. So but I have been in slumps, right? And I have been in places where I'm not motivated. And this is where habits and routines for me go on autopilot and keep me moving through my business and through the world without like just staying in bed all day, right? Yeah. Or getting distracted and scrolling through Instagram all day. So a few things that help me is having clearly defined work that I need to do. So again, It's, if you're not working, if you don't have client work, you can be doing work on your business, but it's hard to get motivated whenever you don't know what that work is. So I would say during your inspired moments, write down things that you want to tackle for your business. So maybe it's updating your website. Maybe it's updating your capabilities packet or your speaker kit, or, all the different things that you could be doing. It could be sending out thank you notes and gifts to your previous clients. So write a list down of all the things that you could be doing to be working on your business. All the things that you're always like, oh, I never have time to work on my business.
Yeah.
I'm always working for my clients. To get you through those times and, start to task it out. So one of the pieces of software that I love is Asana. It's ASANA, and it's a task management software. I'm not sponsored or affiliated with them in any way. But it's a task management software, and it's the only one I've been able to use because I love how they have calendar view. And anyway, I just love the functionality of it. So I like to task out then, okay, if I do want to update our portfolio, what do I need? And I'll task it out and save it for a future date. But then I have all the tasks already laid out. Then one of the other things I like to do whenever I'm kind of in a slump and not super motivated, is to just rely on my habits. So this is more probably personally, but even if I'm in a slog, I'm in the habit of getting up every day, putting on my gym shoes, going to the gym, right? Or at least just going for a walk outside. And I'm, prepping my meals and doing the things, right? So if you can get into your habits, and a book that I highly recommend is Atomic Habits. Have you read it yet?
I haven't.
Atomic Habits is by James Clear. It is a game changer. Even if you think you know everything there is to know about habits, I love the way that he ties in your habits to your identity. So it really is like every habit that you do is making a vote for the kind of person that you want to be. And so it's casting a vote. So that's something that's really helped me as well.
I love that. And now I have items to add to my reading list, and I'm pretty excited. So if people wanted to connect with you, we've got Braid Creative. We shared all the links, but if people kind of wanted a just a overview of being boss, other than reading the book, where would they start on the podcast?
Oh, where to start on the podcast? Well, if you go to beingboss.club, that's our website. And I think that we even have listed like a few of the greatest hits. If you want to hear our interview with Brene Brown, it's episode number 42. You can find Being Boss anywhere you listen to podcasts as well. So I would just say subscribe, go through the list of things, and just download a few episodes that sound interesting and start there.
That's fantastic. Kathleen, thank you so much for taking this time with us. It's been great to talk to you.
It was so fun to hang out with you. Thank you. And thank you to everyone that was here.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. If you want to reach Kathleen, you've got all of those ways to reach her in the comments. And we will see you guys next week. We have Eric Hochberger talking about 2020, the year ahead with Mediavine. We've got some previews of some exciting tech stuff. And we are looking forward to another great season of Teal Talk. Thank you guys so much. Thank you again, Kathleen.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.